Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Perhaps this crowd here is a little more enlightened or a little more informed, but I thought I wanted to start by talking a little bit about why we should be concerned. I think there are a lot of messages going out there in terms of what are we doing? The world is warming, the ice caps are melting. I thought this graph offers a different perspective of what we should be interested in, and this table or this graph that I took from CNN focuses specifically on global sea level rise. But I would want to add the word that, or caveat that this is just a global sea level rise, and the global sea level rise is not consistent across various parts of the world, right? And for good reasons. But I think this the message, is pretty much consistent and similar in terms of what we should be taking note of, and that is the sea level rise is creeping up. Of course, not to the same level of degree or consistency, in different parts of the world, but the general trend is that the levels are rising. And these are just the next few slides will just give you a good sense or illustration of what it means or how it's manifested. Of course, this is just a very simplistic photo, simple photos capturing two different parts on Earth, one in India, in the Indian subcontinent, and one, of course, in Miami. And, it's actually, the message is quite consistent, it's quite clear. The sea level rise is happening across many coastal cities around the globe. It is not targeted at a particular continent nor a particular country. And for those who wonder, okay, I get the message, so what has it got to do with me here in Singapore? And the fact is that we are also seeing some signs. It may not have dawned upon you, perhaps if you're not living in East Coast or Pulau Ubin, but the signs are there. But of course, like I said, the level, the degree, the extent of which varies. And here, or what we have seen so far, or at least over the last decade, is that, there are times of the year where certain parts of Singapore gets inundated. And this has nothing to do with rain that falls from the sky. So these photos were taken on a day where it was crystal clear, where there was no precipitation. But we've noticed that there were inundated areas, there were waterlogged areas. Why? Precisely because of the seawater backflowing into the canals that actually drain out to the sea. When they get too full, the water spills over and onto the surrounding land. So in case you think it's just confined to East Coast Park, I also have pictures of Pulau Ubin, where you can see that for this chap here, the water has reached, slightly above the ankles. Again, this is in the absence of rain. And of course, if you're a fan of or an avid cycling enthusiast, you will notice that there is a slight bit of inconvenience. I submitted my slides to the organizers, I think about 2 weeks ago, and it occurred to me that just a couple of days ago, if you happen to be living in the East Coast area, there was also another episode of what we will call slight inundation on the roads, again in the absence of rain, and that was really due to the tidal influence. So really, actually, it's not just other countries which are experiencing coastal flooding. We are also seeing some signs. So this slide focuses on, okay, I can see some signs. So what happens if we continue to do nothing? So what we've tried to do was to do some projections in terms of simulation, in terms of where, for this part of Singapore, I would clarify, where the potential flooding could be seen if we continue to do nothing under an extreme coastal event. So the areas shaded in blue will give you a sense of where they are. You do not need to pay too much attention to where exactly it is. It's deliberately done in such a way that you will not be able to recognize where. But it gives you a sense, I would stress, it gives you a sense of potentially the places that could be flooded if nothing is done. Just now I mentioned, certain parts of East Coast, they're really experiencing seasonal flooding. And so it comes as no surprise that the areas along the East Coast part are shaded in blue. But actually the extent is not just confined to parts of East Coast. And actually, it is with this in view that the government actually took or made an attempt to highlight the urgency of coastal protection. And it started not just, say, last year or this year. It started quite some time ago at a National Day rally, for those who are aware of what a National Day rally is, where they made the message that actually this is a threat. And this is a threat that, we need to take steps early to watch out for. So the previous Prime Minister said something at the 2019 National Day rally, and this was again reinforced at this year's budget, where the current Prime Minister said that actually we need to start implementing measures from 2030s. And with that in mind, he actually injected another 5B into the Coastal and Flood Protection Fund. It's part of saving ahead, to undertake projects that we foresee that need to be built. Okay. For those who are aware of what we've been doing so far, what have we been doing for the last few years? What we've done is we've been trying to carry out studies across different parts of the island to figure out the flood risk for each area. Just now, I highlighted this particular area in the East Coast, which we call the City East Coast area. But that's not just our work is not just confined to this area. We've been moving across different parts of Singapore to conduct what we call site-specific studies. And the aim of these site-specific studies is to intentionally develop tailored coastal protection solutions for these stretches of coastlines. We try to do it by paying attention to the topography of the area, the site constraints, and this starts really by understanding what the flood risks are. Today is November. 3 months ago, if you've been fortunate or you happen to pass by Vivo City, we actually had an exhibition in the atrium of Vivo City where we made an announcement where the Deputy Prime Minister announced the recommended coastal protection concept for the City East Coast area. So for those who missed the headlines, essentially what the message was that we were looking to do coastal barriers at the Greater Southern Waterfront area as a systematic approach to address the coastal flooding risk for this particular area. And what we've identified so far was a coastal barrier concept, new to Singapore, but not new to the world. Other countries and cities have done it, and we'll be taking reference and learning from them on what's the best way to do it. Now, what we've announced is the concept. We have not pinned down or finalize the location of where these barriers are. As we see on the picture on the left, we've actually drawn out a circle dashed, and that indicates the prelim location. We've not quite named out a location because further studies need to be conducted. And of course, there is the Long Island project, which is slightly further east of the Greater Southern Waterfront, where earlier it was reported that the potential recommended coastal protection concept for this stretch of the Singapore was the Long Island project. And it's not just site-specific studies that we're doing. We recognize, as I said earlier, that we may not have all the knowledge, and it's not possible for us to do everything ourselves. And this is why we have been starting to take steps to work with the industry to co-create best practices in terms of what you can do to improve or show up the resilience of your own developments. 6 months ago, we launched the Alliance for Action concept, where we work with the professional bodies to develop guidelines on how individual developments can do to beef up their own resilience. And we just had our second meeting, say a few weeks ago, where we talked a bit about all the case studies and the tips that we could develop. You could stay tuned to this. We hope to release or launch this guidebook next year when all the work is done. Now, separately, apart from working with the industries, we've been also going to the community, to the ground, to show up the awareness of steps that you can take to beef up the resilience of your own developments. So here on this slide, on the pictures on the right, you'll be showing some of my colleagues from PUB. They've been working to give out free of charge flood barriers that you could put for your own homes. These are typically homes and developments in very low-lying areas, again, in the East Coast, where, it's below what we call the minimum platform level. And in such instances, when rain does fall from the sky, these places may get flooded. And it's important that, they need to be able to be aware of how to deploy these flood barriers that will protect their own assets. Now, so I've spoken a lot about in terms of what we're doing, in terms of studies, in terms of how we want to implement the coastal protection measures, as well as working with the community to improve resilience. Of course, another big part of the equation is research. Like I said, we are pretty much at the start of this journey. A lot of things are not known, and we do not want or wish to lock ourselves into certain approaches. And this is where we've actually launched a research program working again with the local universities and institutes of higher learning to see how we can drive the development of effective and smart solutions where coastal protection is concerned. And this is where a lot of work and a lot of money has been pumped into the local research institutes to see what's the best way forward. And lastly, it's about flood modeling. It is not easy to predict when it will flood. For those who live in Singapore for long enough, you would know that sometimes it's hard to tell when it will rain. It is not, unfortunately, it's not like in Europe where the ecosystem or should I say the weather system is a bit more stable, and you actually predict with great accuracy when it will rain or snow. In Singapore, or rather in the tropical region, the weather systems here are a little more volatile. It's harder to tell when exactly or pin out exactly when it will rain, not to mention where the rain will fall. So likewise for coastal floods, we will also try to do our best to see whether we can have some level of accuracy or confidence when it comes to predicting when coastal floods would happen. Of course, again, this is not something that we have a monopoly of knowledge and wisdom, and this is where we're working with, again, the research institutes to see how we can improve our understanding and knowledge of coastal floods. This is something new, and I think this is something that we're paying attention to. And so, this is my last slide. Really, the essence is that we are at the start of this journey. We're prepared to walk this journey with many members of the community in terms of what we can do to show up the resilience. We may be able to do something, the government may be able to do something, but I think our efforts alone are not enough. And this is where we're keen to partner, not just with the research community, but also with the professional bodies, the industry, as well as all stakeholders to walk this journey with us to build a more resilient future here for Singapore. Thank you.